Like Pluto and Haumea, Makemake is a dwarf planet that's located in the Kuiper Belt. Makemake is named after the Rapa Nui god of fertility. Although Makemake is very bright, it's actually the second brightest object in the Kuiper Belt after only Pluto. Because of its very high inclination, it's not located near the ecliptic, which is where most searches for minor planets take place, and that's why even though it's such a bright object, it took so long for it to be discovered. And Makemake is what's considered a classical Kuiper Belt object, which means it's actually not controlled by a resonance with Neptune. So Makemake has a color index that indicates it's rather red, and this is actually very similar to Pluto's color index, and so Makemake might have a surface pretty similar to that which we've seen in quite a lot of detail on Pluto. And then in 2015, Hubble observations of Makemake uncovered a moon for the dwarf planet. So Makemake is perhaps not as flashy as some of the other planets and dwarf planets, and we really don't know as much about it because it's just so far away and so small, but it's still a very important part of our solar system.
Tides are caused by the moon. So the moon's gravity pulls on the Earth slightly differently on the close side and far side of the Earth, and this leads to a tidal bulge. And as that bulge moves and the Earth rotates, you get tides. In this case, the tidal difference is about 6 feet in Edisto Island, where I was on vacation last week.
What makes something a dwarf planet rather than just a big-ass asteroid? Well, the IU actually has an official definition for this. So back in 2006, they put forth these 3 criteria for something to be considered a planet. This was kind of famous because Pluto doesn't meet this 3rd criteria. But they also created a new category that was defined by things that met these first 2 criteria and not the 3rd one. And this is Pluto and the other dwarf planets. So basically, it has to be large enough to become roughly spherical under its own self-gravity. It doesn't have to be perfectly spherical because dwarf planets spin and that causes some departure from perfect spheres. And also, it has to be in orbit around the sun. That means it can't be a moon of another major planet. Now, there are currently 5 official dwarf planets. That number might increase. For example, Pluto's main moon, Charon, might be considered a dwarf planet in its own right. I think so. 2 main reasons. So one is that the barycenter of the Pluto-Charon system does not lie within Pluto's radius. So basically, they are both orbiting this point of space that is their center of mass, and so how can you really say that Charon is actually orbiting Pluto? However, the Jupiter-Sun barycenter is also not within the Sun, and I don't think anyone would really argue that Jupiter and Sun should be considered a binary. So the other piece here is the mass ratio. So the mass ratio between Pluto and Charon is about 0.12. Now, for context, here are some other mass ratios of planets and their moons. You can see the next largest one is the Earth, and its moon, which is about 0.01, and even that is, an order of magnitude less. And the Jupiter-Sun mass ratio is like 0.0009. Yeah, it's a lot less. So for these reasons, I think that Pluto and Charon should both be considered dwarf planets, and together they would make up a binary dwarf planet or a double dwarf planet.
Planets in multiple star systems, aka good old Tatooine. So yes, it is possible to have planets in multiple star systems. So considering a binary star, you can have a planet in what's called a circumstellar orbit, so that is, it's orbiting just one of the stars, and then the other star is outward of it. Or you can have what's called a circumbinary planet, which actually rotates around both of these stars. This is a Tatooine type planet. These types of stars can have habitable zones, and they can have terrestrial planets. So we haven't found any yet, but they could be there.
What are the Trojan asteroids? No, they're not hollow asteroids filled with Greek soldiers, unfortunately. So these are actually 2 groups of asteroids that are caught in a very special orbital resonance with Jupiter. So this is called a 1-to-1 orbital resonance, which means, yes, they share the orbit of Jupiter. They're just offset from Jupiter in the orbit by about 60 degrees, either ahead or behind. So that's why there's 2 groups of Trojan asteroids. The first Trojan asteroid was discovered in 1906, but now we've detected almost 10,000 of them. But astronomers think that there could be as many as 1 million Trojan asteroids that are greater than a kilometer in size. So this is a fun little astronomy quirk, I think. So by convention, asteroids in the leading group are named after Greek heroes, where asteroids in the trailing group are named after heroes from Troy. However, there were 2 asteroids that were named before this convention was in place, Hector and Patroclus, and so there's actually spies in each camp.
Yep, so this actually used to be explicitly listed in the astronaut requirements that you had to be less than 75 inches tall. That's 6'3" for those of you keeping track at home. I happen to be 6'4" myself. Now, as far as I understand, this is actually largely driven by fitting into the spacesuit.
And in fact, the most recent call for astronaut applications did not include this requirement. It just said that you had to basically be able to fit into the spacesuit and spacecraft. And I think this is because the new kind of generation of spacesuits are more customizable, and so they are not quite as limited. But they're not explicit in this, so I don't actually know if they still are enforcing the 75-inch height limit or not, but there you go. I was too tall to be an astronaut. I'm sure otherwise I would have been selected. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Not at all. This is a great question. So French Guiana is good for a spaceport because it is located near the equator, which is better for putting things into geostationary orbit, although that doesn't really apply in this case. And it's on the east coast, so it has ocean to the east, which means that things like the first stage rocket boosters can fall into uninhabited water. So this is why NASA launches things from Florida for similar reasons. However, in this case, the James Webb Space Telescope is being launched on the Ariane 5, which is a European launch vehicle, and the spaceport in French Guiana is basically the standard European launch site.